Hello guys, welcome back to the AWS course. This is Tahir, your instructor. In today's session, we'll be learning about identity and access management. So AWS has this service called as Identity and Access Management, that is IAM. This service actually lets us to control the identity and the access permission for the different users. This identity and access management is where your users and their access to AWS accounts and services can be managed. So the in our real time, there might be situations where we have to let other people access your account so that they can manage, like the developers or testers. They want to provision the resources for the use. Then you can give the access, you can create the identity for them, and you can give the access to your account so that they can use the resources. So the common use of IAM is to manage the users, groups, IAM access policies, and the roles. When we create the AWS account, we will be creating the account using the root user. So that is the top level user which has full control over the AWS account. Okay. So it has full administrative rights and access to every part of the account. Whenever we create a new user in the AWS account, by default, IAM users will not have any access to any of the AWS services, except the ability to log into the management console. So the root user will be assigning the permissions. The root user will be assigning the permissions to these IAM users. So all the users, by default, they do not have any access. We need to explicitly grant access to the users so that they can use the services. Now, this is the dashboard of the AWS IAM service. So here you under the access management section, in the navigation pane, you have user groups, users, roles, policies, identity provider, account settings, etc. And in the dashboard, you will be having certain security recommendations. These recommendations help us to maintain our account, especially the IAM account or the root user account. So here it is going to give us some recommendation. If we follow that, then it is like best practices to protect our account. The first thing, to have MFA enabled for the root user, and MFA should not have any access keys. These are very important things to protect our account. Okay. Now on the right hand side, the AWS account. In this AWS account, you will be having the details like the account ID, then you will be having the account alias and the URL for the IAM users to log into the AWS management console. Now, coming to IAM user. IAM user are the core components of the IAM service. Okay. So these IAM users are nothing but unique individuals who will be granted permission, who will be allocated permissions to access AWS resources. So these unique individuals can be employees, contractors, or external partners. So to whom you want to let use the resources. Now again, as I said earlier, that IAM users will not have any permission. So this actually helps the AWS to implement the principle of least privileges. That means the IAM users will be having least privileges. We will be assigning the privileges only that are required for them, not all the privileges. So we assign the permission policies which designate their level of access. So if we do not want them to access more, then we are not going to allocate any permission, assign any permission policy to them. So using this IAM users, we can add, remove, or modify the permission policies. These permission policies, you can either for every user you can add, or you can remove the policies, or you can modify, so that if you want to let the users add more permissions, you can add more permissions by modifying the existing permissions. Okay, so the policies can be assigned to the users either directly while creating the user, or after creating the user also we can assign, or we can add them to a group. We can add them to a user group which already has policies. So when we add these users to the group, automatically the policies attached to the group will be applicable on the users that were added into the group. Okay, so this is about the groups. Now users, now we are going to talk about the groups. Now groups, the user groups are also a crucial feature of IAM. So here we will be creating groups. Groups are nothing but collection of users. So what happens is that for if you have multiple users, and for multiple users, if you have to assign the permissions individually, then it is going to take more time, and you need to assign multiple times. Okay, so what we can do is that we can create a group. In that group we can for that group we can attach the policy that will be attached only once, and then we can add the users to them. So when we add the users to that policy, automatically the policies which are attached to the user will be applicable to the users. So whatever the policies we attach to the group, it will be applicable to the users. Okay. So this way, what we are doing, we are actually assigning the policies only once instead of assigning multiple times. So here we can manage permission for multiple users at one time. So again here it is going to follow the least privilege policies principle, wherein we can assign only the level of access which is designated to them. And again we can add the policies, remove the policies, or modify the policies. We can create a group without any policy, and later on we can add the policy to it, or if we want we can remove existing policies. And for the group also we can add or remove the users. Suppose a new employee joins, at the same time old employee leaves the organization, then the new employee will be added to the group. Then that new employee will be getting the permissions for AWS which are assigned to the group. And if the user is removed, automatically the permission for that user will be removed. So we don't need to individually remove the permission for the user. So moving on, next is the policy. Again, this is a crucial feature of the IAM service. Now this helps in controlling the access for the AWS resources. The policies here are nothing but the permission policies, and these policies, using these we can specify the permissions that we can grant to the users or roles or the group, so that they can have only the level of access that is designated to them. So these policies are nothing but set of rules, that is the permissions. Now these policies are actually defined using the JSON based syntax. So it uses a JSON scripting language for defining the policies. And whenever the user is attached a policy, then based on the permissions specified in the policies, those permissions will be allocated to the users. Okay. Now these policies can be attached to a user, a role, or a group. It includes the elements. So in the JSON syntax or the policy, actually it includes some of the elements. The very important elements are effect. For effect, we can have either allow or deny. And coming to next element is action. Action is nothing but the task or the operations that can be performed. And the resource, the third one is the resource. This element specifies the AWS resources. And finally, the condition. Okay. So conditions is based on the condition, the policies will be, or the permission will be assigned. So what it tells is that the effect tells whether it is allowed or not, and action tells what operations the user or role or the group can perform on what resources, and those resources are specified using the resource element. So we can attach a policy or remove a policy, or we can modify a policy based on our requirement. Moving on, next we have the IAM role. In the IAM role are the set of rules for users or resources and applications actually. Now this helps the AWS resources to get access to other AWS resources. Okay, so the AWS resources or applications, programmatically they can get access to the resources. Okay, like if we want to access the S3 bucket from an instance, so for that we need to use the AWS CLI. Okay, for when we are using the AWS CLI, we need to first configure by adding the access key and the secret access key, which are the login credential type of keys for getting access to AWS resources using the AWS CLI. So in this way, what happens is that AWS the access keys are saved in the instance, and if the instance get compromised, then the access keys will also get compromised, which is not a best practice. We might lose the account. So in order to protect our account, we should not recommend the access keys unless and until it is really required. So to overcome that, still we can have access to the S3 bucket using the from the AWS EC2 instance. Then we can use the role. We are going to create a role, attach a policy to that role. The policy should be to access the S3 bucket. We can assign that policy to the role, and that role should be attached to the EC2 instance. Then automatically using the AWS CLI we can access, because the role gives permission to the AWS resources to access other resources. Similarly, in the applications, the developer can use these roles for granting permissions to the applications for accessing the services or the resources in the AWS. So it is the secure way of accessing to the AWS resources by the AWS resources or applications. The roles are for AWS resources or cross account access, or for the applications. So we can use any one of them. Okay, that's it for the theory part of the IAM. In the coming session, we will see the practical part for the IAM service. Thank you for joining. Have a nice day.